what's your message to the public about transportation issues? How do you tie that in with, you work for the governor, Governor Tom Corbett? He has a vision, he has expectations. I can't imagine what kind of expectations he has for you. Might be big. How does that play out, and how does that get conveyed to the public?
Well, let's start with the governor's expectations. I think you probably have seen for the couple of years we've been in office now that he believes we need some fiscal restraint and make better use of the dollars we have. And I guess what I've talked to the public about is when I'm out on the speaker's tour, when I'm out with the public in general, is, to me, I view this organization as these are community-owned assets, meaning the 40,000 miles of road that we own as a state, 25,000 bridges. You and I are part owners of this. We're the shareholders, if you will, of this corporation. PADOT's the corporation that maintains it, and you pay into it. Everybody out there that drives on the road, that owns a car and pays registration, license fees, and gas taxes are basically paying your shares into this corporation. So they're the shareholders, and I tell them all the time that you need to believe that we at PennDOT are entrusting of those dollars that you're giving us, and that we're constantly pushing the envelope on modernizing the agency, just like a private company would, to make the best use of every dollar you give us. And in the end, our job is to take care of those 40,000 miles of road and 25,000 bridges that you depend on. All right, whether you're driving, your kids are riding to school on them, even if you don't drive, you're relying on this network because the food that comes to the grocery stores, it gets from farm to market, the products that you buy at the store, much of it comes across our transportation system: rail, airports, roads, ports. And we have to take care of those so that you can be relying on the fact that your food's going to be there at the grocery store, that the clothes are going to be there when you need to buy them, your kids are going to get to school safely, and that you're going to be able to drive around the state. So when I talk to the public, my message is we are looking at every dollar very hard that you give us, and we are constantly pushing the envelope. As a matter of fact, we have a team here, we're calling it Next Generation of PennDOT, that is working solely focused on what should we be doing differently going forward. Because in a private company, if this was a private company and we were going out to the shareholders and we said, we want you to keep investing in us, they'd want to know, what are you doing with our money, and what do you expect to be doing differently going forward? And to me, public or private should be no different. And that's where the governor and I are closely aligned in believing that we need to instill in the taxpayers a belief that we are working as hard as possible to make best use of every dollar they give us. Now, frankly, for our agency, we have fixed assets, meaning these are roads, bridges, rails that age and need to be replaced. And a part of my message has been that with the age and condition, there's eventually going to be a need to invest more of your money. But before I ask you to do that, you got to be confident that I'm taking care of what you're already giving me. And that's, I believe, something that we have to instill. That's, you mentioned everybody's a marketer. I need everybody in this industry to be singing from the same sheet music in that regard, as saying this is important to communicate what we do with the dollars and how efficient we are with them. I think that instills a willingness for people to then want to invest more. It's the same way companies go about raising money, instill confidence in their shareholders.
I've heard you speak at events like engineering events, and exactly what you're saying there. I've also seen a couple of news publications about well, I saw it on the Awards for Excellence as I was researching on this for this interview. There's some public notices out there. Is PennDOT doing anything, like you mentioned a couple of programs, the suggestions program? That's a big deal. You just mentioned another program that you're doing. Are there other ways that PennDOT wants to or is getting this message out to the public so that they can hear what you're telling me right now?
Well, we're trying to do it through media opportunities, and not just me going around to chamber events and speaking events, but also getting it out through media outlets, and when given the opportunity, talk about it with any media interview. So all of our different partners are talking about. We also, it's not just us. We also have created an organization called the State Transportation Innovation Council, where we brought 40 members from the private sector and educational institutions together to, again, develop ideas for things that we should be doing differently going forward, using new products, using new procedures, policies, practices, et cetera, that are either national, international, or simply from our own state that manufacturers believe would help us reduce costs or improve performance. The State Transportation Innovation Council, I've told all of them, you need to communicate this with the folks you work with, so that again we're getting out to the public at large what we're doing and the business community. It's important.
Okay, excellent, good. I want to talk a little bit about strategy, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier, a very big task, Secretary of Transportation. Most people would just figure it's bridges and highways, and they see a lot of things that need fixed. 40,000 miles of highways, 25,000 bridges, but it's also other modes of transportation: aviation, rail traffic, mass transit, intrastate highway shipping traffic, motor vehicle safety and licensing, driver's licensing. It's the ports, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Erie. It's focused on intermodal transportation. That is a huge task. All done with an approximate budget of $3.8 billion in federal state funds, which comes from motor vehicle fuels tax, which is dedicated solely to transportation issues, all done with 11,000 employees here at PADOT. That's huge.
If you stop and think, it could overwhelm you on any given day, I suppose. But,
speak to that. Speak to...
Well, it's... think about a product getting here. You and I are sitting here in these chairs. How'd they get here? All right, they could have come in by ship. They could have come in through a port, got on a train, and been shipped across the country to a distribution center, and then trucked to a store. All the projects you mentioned that I've worked on in my career, many of those were intermodal. Many of them tied freight movement and people movement. In the end, transportation is about moving freight, moving people. And either one, we've all done it. You've probably been on a plane, you've been on a train, you've been on a bus, and I don't know if you've been on a ship, but freight comes all those different modes, people come in all those different modes. So most of my studies and the whole course of the 30 years, you get out of college and you go to school for civil engineering. And then you start learning about how to apply civil engineering. And you learn that really it's about what I said, moving people and goods safely and efficiently. So all the different modes, if you look at it like you said and think about it all, it can seem overwhelming. And yet, we break it down to, okay, if we're going to move something through the Port of Philadelphia, how's it going to connect? What kind of connections do we need, and analyze that pathway? And through the various modes, whether it's highways, rail, ports, there's a pathway through there that we have to analyze how that shipping is going to occur. And that's something even right now, we have a statewide freight study that we just started because we're deepening the river in Philly and the Panama Canal is being changed. There's going to be an economic opportunity created there for additional shipping in Philadelphia. Where do we target our investments? With that $3+ billion we have, how should we target investments to both take advantage of the economic opportunity for job creation, which is a big thing for the governor, big thing for us in the state of Pennsylvania, be competitive economically to create those jobs, and how do we safely and efficiently move the freight that's going to come through there to make sure we can handle it? How should we be targeting those investments today? So it's a combination of really planning, looking to what's there today, what's likely to happen in the future, what could change, talking to private business, saying, what are you thinking? And then targeting our investments to make sure that we're investing in the right places at the right time.
This is showing me the absolute necessity for the blend between the technical expertise and the ability to lead, and putting those two together to making it all work. It's like you can't have one without the other, and you're demonstrating that. And you're talking all the technical. You just listed a whole bunch of major issues that are all technical, but then you've got this leadership ability to work with 11,000 people and communities. You're working with communities and counties, and so it's like it just emphasizes to me the importance of developing our leadership skills so that we can get these things done, which leads me to my next question, which is seemingly, and I'll title this, Doing the Impossible. And I want to read this quote that was stated by you. It says, "We have a $3.5 billion shortfall." Now, this is in Pennsylvania. That represents 20 years of underinvesting in our infrastructure. We, Pennsylvania, need to enact a comprehensive, inflation-sensitive solution, one that builds a strong initial funding source and grows in time to allow Pennsylvania to ramp up its program and address the needs of the Commonwealth. This requires a sustainable revenue source dedicated to transportation. And here's a kicker. Otherwise, we will simply push this problem to the future generations and lose economic competitiveness to states that invest in infrastructure. I read this and I reread this several times. It's powerful. There's a lot in those couple of sentences that you stated. It speaks of the, is it impossible to get this done? Plus tied into the fact that we are the Keystone State. I don't know the details, but I-81, what is that, the most traveled truck traffic through our city here in Harrisburg, PA?
It is.
So we are the Keystone State. And and all that speak to, this is a huge deal.
It is, and it's something that when I'm out speaking about this, I always tell people, you should care about this, and you should care about it because it's part of our economic fabric. We are the history of Pennsylvania, canals, railroads, a lot of our economic history is built around the fact that our geographic location and the natural resources that we have. And today we're developing a new one, Marcellus Shale. How do we build the infrastructure to both develop that resource and then export it so that it can help our economy? There's been coal, there's been, as I said, the canals. Transportation has always been an integral part of our Pennsylvania economy, partly because of our geographic location. You can't get to the Northeast without going through Pennsylvania. And a lot of the nation's population is within driving distance of Pennsylvania. So, for that $3.5 billion gap that we talk about, if you think back about when a lot of this infrastructure was built, back in, especially the road systems back in the 60s when the interstate was built,
right.
Our parents' generation paid about a third of the price of a gallon of gas to build that, to finance it. Over time, we have eroded that down to now we pay less than half of that. We pay less than about 10% of the price of a gallon of gas goes into investing back into the roads and bridges to take care of them. And you mentioned I have, twins that are over 1 year old, Jackson and Jocelyn, by the way, are the names.
Okay, good.
For me, in this role, it's a unique thing to take a perspective and saying, what am I doing while I'm in this role about the next generation? What are my kids going to face if I don't do certain things while I'm in government? And I think for this generation, it's a question of we're not investing nearly as much as the previous generation did to build and now take care of this infrastructure. So for Pennsylvania to be competitive and to safely move people and products through here, are we going to invest or are we going to say we don't want to spend more, let the next generation pay for it? Now, I've often likened this to when you first start out of college, you frequently have a credit card that you buy stuff with because you can't really afford it, so you borrow the money. And when you make a minimum payment on the credit card and the interest rate's high, the interest grows faster than your minimum payment. That's what we're doing right now on transportation. We're making kind of a minimum payment and we're letting the interest build. And every year that $3.5 billion gap gets bigger. Why? It's a $3.5 billion annual gap. When you don't spend it 1 year, then you defer it. The next year the gap grows to $3.7 billion. The year after that it's $3.9 billion. And so what are you doing? You're pushing that bill to the next generation.
Right.
And in the end, it's going to hurt our competitiveness. And I always say too, all of us make decisions every day about costs. We look at what should I do? Should I fix my car or is it at the point where I should replace it? The appliance guy comes and looks at your refrigerator and says it's going to cost $300 to put this part in and the whole refrigerator costs $500. We all make decisions like that every day. Well, right now in transportation, choosing not to invest costs you. And the reason I say that is if you're driving around on a posted weight restricted bridge, if you're a farmer or a business and the bridge is weight restricted because we can't afford to fix it, you're spending fuel to drive around it. That's a cost. If you're sitting in congestion and on a daily basis sitting there for 15 or 20 minutes, the trip's taking you an extra 20 minutes longer than it should, you're wasting fuel, you're burning, that's charging you. It's a cost that you're bearing. If we invested instead, we could fix those problems and reduce that cost. So I think for everybody out there that's concerned about this or interested or just listening to me now, you should be concerned. If you're not, you should be. One, it's about public safety. two, it's about a generational responsibility and a cost that's simply going to get passed on to the next generation. These are assets, just like the car that you own, the roof on your house. If you don't take care of it, I don't think I would want to turn over my home to my kids and say, as I pass on, here's the property. I did nothing in maintenance to it for 30 years, so here you go. What are you handing them? You know, you're handing them something that's a big cost. You wouldn't want to do that to your children. And to me, that's what we're doing.
Do you think, given the current economic situations and the current shortfalls, of course, I know the vying for these additional funds, do you think that as a country and as individuals, maybe we just can't expect to have a perfectly smooth highway anymore? We've got to live with some discomfort.
Well, you know, I think that's a choice that we ought to all be thinking about. Again, if it's not a smooth highway and if there are bad surfaces, which we're seeing on our roads because of our funding situation, there's a cost built into that. All right? And the cost to you is the cost in wear and tear on your tires and your shocks. And as I said, in congestion, if we're not fixing the problem, we're charging it a different way. We're charging additional fuel consumption. Our report that I chaired the commission on recommended a series of fee increases that would cost the average driver about $250 a week. Somebody who drives 12,000 miles a year, about $250 a week. That's less than the price of a gallon of gas. If you're sitting in congestion, you're spending more than a gallon of gas a week sitting in congestion every day. So it comes down to an economic decision. And when you say, should we expect less, what's less cost you? And would it cost you less in the long run to fix it? And to me, I think the numbers speak for themselves, that it would be cheaper for everyone if we'd pay a little more now to fix the problem, rather than say, I don't want to pay anything, it's going to cost me more in the long run.
That's a good message. That's an excellent message. So that ties into, and you may have already answered it, how to win over others on your ideas or the governor's ideas. The idea of inflation-sensitive funding, higher gas taxes, the issue of the possibility of cameras at red lights so that people automatically get a ticket if they go through. You know, a lot of people are going to resist that. How do you sell these kind of things to the public? But you partly answered that, and there's a cost if we don't.
I think
fix these things.
You know, to me, again, 28 years in running a private company, every place I've worked on the private side, every decision you make, you sit down and you analyze, what if we do it, what if we don't do it? All right, what's the implications in cost, what's the implications to the company, what's the implications to the staff, anybody who could be affected by this decision, what are the positives, what are the consequences? And all I've tried to do in this role is present that. And to me, you mentioned red light cameras. We have accidents at intersections and we have people running red lights. We're not doing this for revenue. We're doing this for safety. And there's a proven correlation to once you put the cameras in, people stop running red lights. All right? And, well, the red light's there for a reason, right? It's there for safety. It's not there because we're trying to generate revenue. The folks who think it's revenue generating and think we shouldn't be doing it for revenue, I'd ask you to just compare that to, do you think we shouldn't be doing speeding tickets? Why do we do speeding tickets? The policemen are there to basically keep you driving the safe speed for safety. Not because we want revenue out of it, but simply the highway was designed for 55 miles an hour. That's what you should be driving at, not 75. That's unsafe. I don't see anybody arguing that we shouldn't be issuing speeding tickets. All we're doing is using technology to reduce the cost of the enforcement. And in the end, and for everyone who's opposed to red light cameras, I would just say, think of the consequence. If there's accidents, if you know the accidents are going to be reduced from this, and you know compliance is going to go up, if it was your kid riding a bike across an intersection, or your family member entering that intersection, wouldn't you prefer that people stop? And do you really care how we chose to get them to stop? The way we're choosing is lower cost than going out and hiring a bunch of policemen. It's lower cost. And in the end, it's going to improve safety. So, to me, that is the ultimate responsibility of this organization, for me in this position, is to ensure that you and your family can go out on those highways and be safe. And this is one method that improves safety.
It's excellent. What I've heard you say, what I got out of it is yeah, there is this large task here. But we take what we know, we take what we've learned, and we look at the pluses and the minuses, like you say, what if we do and what if we don't, and we weigh that out, and then depending on how whoever, maybe it's a governor's decision, maybe it's the public's decision, maybe it's a legislator's decisions whether we pay more taxes or not, what falls out falls out. You have done your duty to put it all out there for people to decide whether they want to be part of it or not.
People need to have the opportunity to make an informed decision. My job is to give them the information on both sides of the ledger and look at it objectively. I'm a public servant, and I recognize that my role as Secretary of Transportation is to provide factual information to the public, again, who I consider to be our shareholders, to the legislature, who I consider to be the board of directors of this company, and then allow them to make their decisions. And the public will influence the legislators and vice versa. I'm just simply trying to present, here's a factual evaluation of where the system is, where the investment level is, what I think it should be, and what are the consequences of doing it and not doing it.
One more question, and then we'll wrap up. Work-life balance. Of course, when you got this job, I remember, it was right shortly after that you had your twins, and here you are in a new job, significant job. And how do you balance all that out?
Well, I think anybody in any job has to balance work and life. And to me, all the years of leading up to this helped me to do that. Frankly, when I was younger, I didn't do such a good job at work-life balance. I worked too much. I'd say when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, you say I'm having twins late in life. I didn't get married until I was 42. Well, I didn't do such a good job of balancing work and life when I was young. And I think when you're younger, and I'll just say this to everybody that's watching this, there's a tendency to get wrapped up in your career and think, this is exciting, it's interesting, I've got to go do all these things that are going to help me get into a better position, leadership, and you might miss some opportunities on the personal side that you don't want to miss. Fortunately for me, I'm getting these opportunities later in life, perhaps later than I should have, in the case some days the twins wear me out, but I think any parent would tell you that. But whether you have this child that I have now, I prioritize my family. And each week I have to look at the week and say how many days and time, how much time is available, and what am I going to prioritize about this job. I could spend endless hours on any given topic here. I have to decide which ones I'm going to focus on that week. But as I blend and look at the week, I have to look at what's important to my family, what's important to me and my health, meaning I'm still playing basketball, I'm still getting to the gym to stay in shape. I still play in a band because that helps me kind of release away from this technical field and play music, which is a little less structured. And I know that in the end, both the physical activity and the band activity will make me a better father, a better husband, a better Secretary of Transportation.
Touch on that a little bit more, the band, because I remember when you were first made secretary, there was an article in the newspaper. Barry Schoch is playing in a band, appearing at some local place, and I heard you make some statements about that, which made me think of you. This guy's a real person. So.
You didn't know that before?
No, but I guess it's, and I'll touch on, when I heard some things about how you're communicating with employees, and I was thinking,